Alrighty, hello everybody, and welcome back to Conversations with Criado. My name is Kylinn Askew. I'm the executive director of Criado, and I'll pass it over to my co-founder Tosi.
Thank you, Kai. I'm Tosi. I am the program director and co-founder of Criado.
I know we do these little catch-ups like once a month, and a lot happens in a month-long span, actually. I think it's important and cool that we're doing something like this because ultimately our mission is transforming the delivery and accessibility of health education. So having these check-ins are one, an opportunity for us to kind of stay up to date on the landscape, but then also provide insight to people who watch us and are involved in our movement, giving them like a bird's eye view too about what's going on in different topics from tech to actual healthcare to policy to everything that's happening in the atmosphere. So,
Mm-hmm.
really excited for today's episode.
Thank
Let's
you,
get started.
Kylinn. This is my favorite time of the Criado month. I love
The
podcasting,
Criado agenda.
right? Okay, funny you mentioned policy. So, right now in school, what I'm learning, I am doing policy briefs, and I want your hot take on a policy that is currently in the legislation right now with Georgia. So, we're in the legislative period, and this starts kind of at the top of every year, and it gets really important. So, you all may see people pushing to like send letters to your legislature, da 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 da, let them know that you want support of this, XYZ. It actually is super important. So, this first one is the Georgia House Bill 329, and this allows for registered and certified nurse practitioners and registered nurses to do artificial insemination. The reason why, or I guess the idea behind this bill, is to make artificial insemination and fertility more accessible, specifically to Black women and all women, specifically the LGBTQIA, because oftentimes they need a sperm, they need to do this process in order to have a baby,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have the doctor's appointments available. Like, when's the last time you saw your actual doctor versus a nurse practitioner? And how much easier is it to get those appointments versus the one with your doctor? So I'm gonna stop. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I first have a lot of questions. So it's
Okay.
like obviously from a humanity perspective, I
Yeah.
think those that have the desire to be parents should be allowed to be
Mhm.
parents, especially if you have the means and mental aptitude to support a child. From the legislative perspective, I'm curious, these nurse practitioners that will be allowed to offer artificial insemination, the regulations that still keep these safe and monitored practices, I'm
Mhm.
assuming and hoping would that would still be in place.
Yeah, the bill has that they have to be certified or somehow signed off by a doctor who is certified to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And how this was brought up is Laisha Clark. She's amazing. I'm gonna meet her one of these days. She's in Georgia, but she came and did a talk in my class, a guest lecture. And when they brought up this bill, it was really funny. She's like, "Cause people be turkey basting for the longest time in their houses."
Yeah.
And however, if you want to do this like medically, you literally have to wait to get an appointment with the MD. And we know, one, that's money you're going to have to pay to do that. How much time are you going to have to wait? I just thought it was so interesting. And I have never really thought about the barriers in place for fertility
Mm-hmm.
for women.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting. The barriers that exist, like for fertility for those that want to carry a child,
Mm-hmm.
I think like any other systemic issue has a different level of impact regarding, I mean, at various levels of like economic condition. So, in chatting with some of my friends who are employed with like top tech companies, fertility packages are included in their benefits. Even if they're not interested in using them, if that's something that they would like to consider, they have the opportunity to work with their employer to help them figure out the best case scenario for how they can freeze their eggs or go through an IVF treatment or consider adoption.
Yeah.
And it's like these are people making $150,000, $200,000 a year,
Yeah.
and all these options become available to them. Another example in terms of accessibility, I think that there are a lot of good and qualified organizations and individuals that have like taken on this journey as well.
Mm-hmm.
a colleague, Takira Mitchell. She runs an organization here in Georgia, Preferred Fertility Concierge, and she's an RN, and she assists women and those that want to carry a child through the IVF, in vitro artificial insemination process,
Yeah.
whether it be through actual injections or just support and concierge services, things like that. She's built a network of other RNs too that can support nationwide, and I think the work that she's doing is great.
No, that's amazing. And that's amazing. And I think her support is necessary, like aside from the doctoral support, because this study that Laisha Clark did with Black women and fertility, it was literally not, it wasn't low income, socioeconomic status wasn't a thing here. These were women making, with their doctorates, making hella money, but they were going through this journey and they had all of these areas that were so hard for them, from talking to a doctor they're not comfortable with about them being LGBTQ, wanting to have a baby, and then them having to wait all this time and then having to give yourself shots. Who gives these shots to you? Like, if your partner's not with you, it's this whole thing. Or women who want to have babies on their own.
Yeah, I was
Like,
gonna
they
mention
don't
that
have a
point.
partner.
I have a close friend actually who is choosing to do that.
Yeah.
And she's in the process, like on her third round of attempting. And it's
Exactly.
like really interesting, and talking to her has been interesting too, because from that perspective, when you are choosing to do it independently,
Mhm.
you're choosing characteristics and things that you would like, and that's a whole other conversation. But so I'm curious, with this policy, is it that, or like what were the roadblocks and obstacles, or what are the roadblocks and obstacles that individuals are facing now,
Mhm.
in addition to the identification obstacles? So like whether or not certain queer identifying people are not comfortable with certain doctors in this experience. Is this bill, or is this policy directed towards the queer community, or is it generally that those that are looking to have a child are struggling, from, whether it be from time, available resources, or what? Like, what is the problem that this bill is solving?
The second thing you said. So this is for all birthing people.
Yeah.
Whether or not you're queer, or it could impact all of those people. The issues were being able to have a baby the non-traditional way. It takes planning, it takes steps, it takes process, and it sometimes takes multiple tries.
Yeah.
And if it's taking multiple tries and you can only get an appointment with your doctor every 3 or 4 months, could you imagine how much that prolongs this process for those birthing people? And then on top of that, we have this biological clock and the anxieties that come with, I can only see my doctor in 4 months to start having a baby. I don't even know if it's going to take. So then I got to wait another 4 months to meet with my doctor, when you could get a next day appointment with an RN and be able to try on every cycle and
Right.
basically up your success rates.
Mhm.
So that was the main problem.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's cool.
It is cool. I'm very curious too how insurance feels. Like, who's getting paid?
Exactly. Exactly. No, and that's, I would have to read deeper. But this one had nothing to do with insurance. However,
Because also a lot of times it is out of pocket.
yeah, for sure. So that was my first hot take.
Interesting.
Did you like it?
Yes,
Thank
we love a
you.
policy. My hot take is I would first just like you to look at this. I have a flyer for a upcoming conference pulled up, and
Okay.
we'll flash it on the screen. I just want your first thoughts on what the conference is and about, and then go from there.
Oh my gosh, wait, I'm nervous. Okay. First, okay. You want my first honest opinions? It's all men, which shout out to my men. That's cool. For a Cure for Moms, I know, is a great organization, and Charles Story, I've heard him speak before. He has an amazing, but like horrific story. But I love that he's able to share
Turn it
that.
around, yeah.
Yeah, and share that with the world and make change. I'm not sure who these other people are. Centering the role of fathers addressing maternal health inequities. Yeah, I think I think I'd want to know more. I think I need more description of what they mean by that.
Yeah.
Period. Those are my initial thoughts.
Okay. So I wanted to have this as the basis of our conversation just for a
Okay.
second because for context, this is the Black Maternal Health Conference. April is Black Maternal Health Week, and it is an event that happens annually. We've participated in some great activations in the past honoring this week, but organizations nationwide kind of come together to honor, celebrate, acknowledge.
One more thing. It was coined by Black Mamas Matter Alliance, and April 11th through 17th every year, and it's celebrated throughout the nation.
Yes. So this conference in particular, this panel in particular, is centering the role of fathers in addressing maternal health inequities. And when I saw it, the title specifically grabbed me because of how relevant and important it is. I think it was between this year and last year where the information being socialized about the role that men play in successful birth outcomes started to become more mainstream. Like men learning that it's their sperm that's responsible for building the walls of the placenta, and the how far the placenta is actually entering into the uterus, and like certain disqualifications like that. I feel like prior to last year in TikTok, a lot of men like weren't aware of that. I wasn't even
They're not
aware
part
of
of the
that.
conversation.
Yeah, and oftentimes it's like you don't know until something goes wrong, unfortunately. So at a surface level, I think this conversation is very important.
Yeah.
What took me aback a little bit, as you acknowledged, the panel is all men.
Yeah.
I love that for them. I love that we are having a more inclusive conversation. And I also recognize, as someone who is on the field, how important it is for multiple voices in the conversation, especially when we're talking about a topic like that. I think that that topic is so important and grave that I really am looking forward to the true, like, actualization of the subject matter, because it is the facts that I just mentioned about like men's health being responsible for placental health and things like that, but then it's also very much like the socio-emotional conversations that exist within households too that are equally as important in Black maternal health outcomes and general maternal health outcomes.
Yes.
And I hope and pray that we can use an audience in a panel like this to have those conversations. Like, I think we're moving in the right direction. And I also recognize that I've been to many panels before where the title was like catchy and exciting and that people were like the rock stars of the industry, and we totally missed the point.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you in favor of this panel and hopeful for what they will discuss? Is that kind of what you're saying?
In general, because I'm hopeful for the industry.
To bring men into these conversations.
Yeah.
Yes. I think your point when you said it's important to have diversity in these conversations, to me, and from my experience, like with my husband, when I talk to him, we're not pregnant, but I be talking to him about baby stuff, pregnancy stuff all the time. Like, listen, when I'm pregnant, I like this. When I'm I bet we getting him prepped. But when he talks about these conversations and I ask him from your perspective, would you go to like this seminar with me, talk, whatever, and it's primarily women led? He's like, yeah, I'll go with you. I'll go for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think having an all men panel may actually make him feel, and he's told me this, like if it was like, man, bro, I'm probably going to go for me, and it'll make me feel like I have a network and like I have people that I can talk to, because you're right. So much happens within the perinatal space between the birth partners.
Mm-hmm.
So much change is going on. So many opinions and hormones and thoughts and feelings, because not only women can go through postpartum depression, men can go through it too. Like, all of these conversations need to happen. And I actually love that they have an all men panel for Maternal Health Week. I think there's also room for familial panels and bringing families into it, which we're gonna do at ours. But I think that there's a space for this, and I'm for it overall. I'm for it.
Yeah, I'm excited and looking forward to see what is discussed and like the ultimate outcomes from it.
Yeah.
I just think, like you can't really like ultimately know the outcome until it happens.
Yeah.
I just think the conversation is so important.
Yeah.
And I want it to continue. And I think there's more ways to engage men in the conversations outside of just like the maternal health outcomes. Like we were just talking about, there's a lot that happens in the perinatal period between a couple
Yeah.
that is not just like medical related. So continuing those conversations and hoping that this is like a launching pad for a more engaged ecosystem. I think that's something that like we're trying to balance the impact of, like wanting women to feel like honored, heard, and discovered, but then also recognizing that we cannot solve a problem independently.
Facts. Too much is put on birthing people in general to be the problem solvers. I remember we had this conversation about the mental load of being a woman. We don't need to do it all on our own.
Yeah.
But we have been for a long time, which is why we have high stress.
I don't wear my watch anymore.
Let's talk about it.
I don't like it.
Let's talk about why. Why? What do you not like about it?
Once I learned the facts about my data, I was not interested in continuing to be berated about my facts. So it's like
information overload?
Information overload without direct solutions. Like my next step was to go to a doctor, and then show them this data and have the conversation. Once I did that, I took the watch off.
So has your health improved?
I get like, no.
You don't know.
Because truthfully, like what I'm dealing with is more of a journey / like nothing is like to improve. Because from our last conversation, we were talking about like I have a naturally high heart rate. Like my heart rate rests at like 80 to 90 BPMs. Exactly. My heart is always fluttering. I'm such a girl.
Stop.
So my concern there was that oftentimes like pregnancy related complications have to do with heart health. So it's like I want to go to a doctor before I get pregnant and say, hey, my heart rate is kind of high. What stresses should I look out for? Should this be an issue? Is this an issue? Or is this just something that I've had my entire life and my body's gotten used to it? So the watch did provide that ability. Like I didn't know that that was something that I needed to ask or inquire about before I got pregnant prior to wearing a watch.
Okay.
And then while I was wearing a watch too, it would beep at me all the time saying high stress, high stress. For the first couple of weeks of me wearing it, I would actually try to slow down. Like a couple times I'd go on a walk and my stress would be high. I said, I'm not going back in the house until my heart rate comes down. And I'd sit on my front porch like, I can't do that.
It never went down.
It went down, but like, it's an excuse, but like my life is too fast for that type of behavior.
I have multiple thoughts. First thought is, because I am like pro team smart tech, wear it, know about yourself every day. I love it. I'm thinking maybe what if there was a different, like maybe the smart watch wasn't it for you, but a ring is more your vibe.
Maybe a ring. And I also think that my approach to, I want updates.
Yeah.
I would like to, because like then that gives me something to work towards. That's not, you know what else was pissing me off?
What?
Is that it would tell me that I was sleeping poorly every night. I would wake up.
How is this the watch's fault? Why are you mad at the watch?
No, because I would wake up rested and like delightful and full of life. And I would look at my watch and say, sleep like, score 4.
So it's the watch's fault that the sleep. You don't. Maybe
I didn't believe it. So it's like and I think to answer your original question, I think I would much rather. I wish that there was a type of health system that kind of existed where I could check in on like a monthly or bi-weekly cadence. I think monthly is enough, but like on a monthly cadence, like that first month, I get my full workup, my heart rate, my stress levels, the VO2 max, like everything, and then I get told what like I should be or where I need to be working towards, what I can improve. And then I come back a month later and like we have like a regular communication about it. Because I think then that would allow me to have like the conversations like, oh, my heart rate's high. I want to have a baby in a little while. Like,
Yeah.
what should I be doing? Should
Yeah.
I get a pillow that props me up? Like,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Like, how do I cope with whatever
Exactly.
is going on?
But
in
every
my body?
morning
Yeah.
telling me that I'm not doing good enough was not working.
See, it's negative psychology versus positive psychology.
Yeah. And it's not like it was saying like, you're dumb, try again.
No,
but it was like, not rested, LOL.
No,
Like,
literally. And when you think about behavior change, right? There is a whole side of behavior change that deals with negative versus positive psychology. Because no one wants to be told they're not doing good enough every single day. Absolutely no one.
And I would try. Ask
yeah.
Joseph. I'd be like, turn the lights off. Turn them off. It's 8 o'clock.
He said no.
Red light only after 8:30. My watch is gonna yell.
No, so my first thought was maybe it wasn't the right type of smart tech for you.
Yeah. It was on the baseline, like to get the info.
Yeah, and I love that. And like this health journey, it's so beautiful because it looks different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I wear my watch all the time. It doesn't beep at me. It doesn't, but I have turned a lot of the settings off. And so I look at it when I want. So for example, when I was driving here and I was late, I felt myself, I was like, I feel my chest getting tight. I'm like, let me just see what my stress is. High stress. Wow. So I'm right. So like I'm learning to connect my body to my mind, kind of like this conversation we had last time. But it's on my terms.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded like yours was on the watch's terms.
And it was exclusively the morning report. Like, does yours do that? Like, when I wake up in the morning, it would be like, here's your morning report. And it would tell you how long you slept, how deep you slept, how many hours of REM. Yeah. So
no,
it's like,
mine doesn't do that.
Okay.
I go to my app when I want to.
So mine on the watch says, good morning. And then it like you had 3 hours of REM. You had 4 hours of light sleep.
Yeah.
And then it will be like, my HRV was 20 when it should be 70. And I'm like, just like, yeah.
It's a lot. But this is the conversation that I think is really important. Does smart technology sometimes make stress worse?
Yeah. I think that it definitely has its limitations.
Yeah.
I think anything that you're wearing full time is going to, in some way, come up.
Yeah.
Because I've also, another reason, like maybe even prior to it giving me headaches, it was also making my wrist have a little discomfort.
Oh, I definitely have a whole little spot.
Yeah.
From like the sensor.
Exactly. And then one of our friends, he is like a competitive cyclist and he lives by a Garmin smartwatch.
Okay.
But him too, he's like, okay, wipe it down with alcohol every 48 hours.
Oh, no.
Dry it in the sun and then it won't give you any. I'm like, I would just rather get a call monthly from my doctor.
Yeah.
Hey, here are your numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. I think also the benefit of wearing a watch every day is specifically if you're high risk for something.
100%.
So
I think high risk monitoring is very important.
Yeah. And the question is, how do you determine if you're high risk? Maybe do this trial period with this watch, with this smart tech to see if there's something going on with your body, because most likely there's something. Is it a big deal or not? That's the question we're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
But one of our Criado experts we work with, Catherine, shout out to Catherine, she has an organization called Operation Mist, and they do remote patient monitoring. Essentially, all of their Mist moms get this watch, this Garmin watch, and they connect their data to the nurse's like dashboard, and they have someone constantly watching them. Why that's important is because, as we know, when you're pregnant, so many things can change like that. And they've literally saved lives being able to monitor a person every single day by saying, hey, your heart rate is really high. Hey, have you checked this out? You need to call your doctor and go see because your body's not right now. And they've saved lives. So I think there is a place for continuous monitoring. Is it for everyone at all times for their whole life? Maybe not.
Yeah. I think that's been very interesting to me recently, reading into the different options that exist out there and like how different companies are doing it.
Yeah.
A lot of money is being spent in health tech.
So much money. And there's so many organizations that have watches, rings, ear things. I just saw, oh my gosh, what was it? Oh, for boxers specifically or sports people, it was a mouth guard that tracks your hydration and like all this stuff. It can go to an app and it's from a mouth guard.
That's actually fascinating. I think that could be
Crazy.
very helpful for like football players too.
Yeah, yeah, and it does like your hit, like when you get
Yeah.
hit, it does the measure of how hard
Like
you hit.
impact.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but no, it's crazy.
That's really cool.
You ready for my next hot take?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First, I want to ask you, when I say the words body literacy, what do you think of?
Your level of literacy of your body, like kind of how we are doing body talk educations to learn about the different functions of your body
Yeah.
from a physiological perspective and anatomical perspective, but also what's happening internally as well, how it relates and changes at different stages of your life and
Yeah.
etc.
You're pretty knowledgeable. Good job.
I love the word literacy. Like that's one of my favorite words to use to describe things that involve education.
Yeah, I think literacy is important. I came across this website while I was making our menstrual digital toolkit, which we're really excited to share this with you all when it comes out. But there's this woman called Nicole, and she has this website called learnbodyliteracy.com. You all should check it out if you have not. And how she defines body literacy is self-knowledge about the menstrual cycles as a vital sign and a measure of overall health and wellness. I think that is a mic drop, because your menstrual cycle is so much more than just is important for so much more than when you're just trying to have a baby. Like, we've talked about, what can your period blood tell you about your health? How are people studying that? What does your cycle right now tell you about your menopause? Or what is your menopause cycle telling you about where you are in life? Like, I loved how much detail she put into linking your menstrual cycle to your body literacy. And it was so cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to stop there and let you share your thoughts on that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I forgot the name of the book, but I read it and then I told you about it. And it was talking about the significance of menstrual cycles in determining overall women's health and
Yeah.
how crazy it is that we are not more intentional about like studying menstruation and like from like the actual like discharge of it. And
Yeah.
it's interesting and it kind of relates to the topic that I want to talk about next too.
Okay.
But yeah, I think generally overall body literacy is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
And then from a menstruation perspective, I think that provides a good timeline for literacy throughout womanhood, for example. So it's just like when a young woman like gets her first menstrual cycle,
Mm-hmm.
not saying that's the time that she should start caring about her body, but like in the grand scheme of things, like
Yeah.
that's kind of it. That kind of is when things start getting real.
Yeah. For real.
In a lot of different ways. And then you start paying taxes.
At the age of 13, whatever.
And then you just, then you
boom. Period.
So yeah, I think that's great. Nicole, I would love to partner.
Yes.
I think the literacy, that's our avenue.
Yes. And the way that she words everything, I think is really, really cool, because she talks about what it looks like with hormones, PCOS, endometriosis, but she also talks about like pleasure and things like that. There's one more definition I want to read. How she says this on her website is, we use the scientifically proven signs of fertility and infertility to understand when to become fertile and when we're not, as well as using this knowledge to measure our hormones and inform us about a range of reproductive health issues and beyond. I just love her verbiage, and I love all the work that she's done, and I did reach out to her to partner via your email, Nicole, so get back to us, because you're really cool, and we think you're great.
Awesome. That to kind of almost continue the conversation, one of the topics that I wanted to talk about was the longevity market. And very specifically, actually, I'm going to keep it high level. So, as of right now, the longevity market is kind of dominated in the male space. I'm really big on just like being very human and transparent about the fact that we need to kind of stop separating
Mm-hmm.
genders in everything. Like, I recognize that women have their own experiences, men have their own experiences as well.
Yeah.
But I think the automatic separation of this is for men, this is for women often leaves often leaves somebody left out of the conversation. And up until this point, it's been women. So I recognize that things for women are important. That's what we do. And when talking about leading healthy lives for longer periods of time,
Yeah.
I think it's important to include all people in the
That's a
conversation.
human conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
However, one of the things I did want to talk about was menopause. So
Can men be in this conversation?
they can be in the conversation and knowing what to do and how to recognize menopause. When my mom was going through menopause, we would drive to school in the morning, middle of winter, upstate New York, all 4 windows down, all the way down,
Yeah.
like just beads of sweat pouring. And then also her, like, she shares very candid and vivid stories now about like feeling like she was going crazy. And a lot of her friends often have like similar stories. And it's interesting because I've read a lot of materials now about how much your brain changes when you're going through menopause and perimenopause. And up
Literally.
until this point, it wasn't openly discussed. It's just like, okay, you're going to have some bodily changes, maybe some vaginal dryness, and you're hot. That's menopause. But it's like, actually, your brain is physically changing.
Yeah.
You're thinking about things differently. You're feeling differently. You're at higher risk of depression, like certain things like that.
Yeah.
And then just generally within menopause and aging in general, specifically for women, like the losing of muscle mass and bone density, like your abilities change and
Yep.
how mentally impactful that is. It's just like a crazy conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Saying all that to say, I read a study that was articulating that a lot of postmenopausal or like during menopausal outcomes
Mm-hmm.
are dictated by preventative care measures and things that occur prior to 40. So
I believe it.
yeah, so for example, like regular exercise.
Mm.
Exercise is one of the most important indicators of successful life and longevity across the board, men or women. But regular exercise and regular cardiovascular exercise specifically, but strength training is more important than cardiovascular at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously like eating healthy foods and hydration and things like that, but then also like socio-emotional outcomes and things like, I keep saying things like that, but like cardiovascular training, strength training, food and nutrition
Yeah.
prior to 30 to 40 has such an impact on what type of menopause you'll have and how that will affect you moving forward.
Like the intensity, the
The
length.
intensity, the duration,
yeah.
what the symptoms that affect you. Because truthfully, like perimenopause kind of starts in your late 30s, early 40s, depending on who you
Don't
are.
say that.
Truly depending on who you are, and also depending on like what your lived experience is. I know women who have had to have an early hysterectomy and had early menopause. So it's like you can be going through menopause at any stage. It's like,
Yeah.
or if you're on a certain course of medication because maybe you're dealing with fibroids, that triggers menopausal symptoms.
Yeah.
When menopause happens for an individual, it can vary based on their life circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
But it is very interesting to hear and understand how preventative care measures significantly impacted menopausal outcomes.
Yeah.
Because we often talk about menopause as that thing that happens when you reach a certain age, and then after that, it's like you're a different person. And you kind of are. You kind of are. A lot happens, a lot changes. You probably have like kids then if you want them. Like you're quite truly a different person.
Yeah.
But from the medical side and the health side of what's changed, like physiologically within you, very fascinating to know that my decisions now will have a huge impact then.
Yeah. No, I would love to know this study. Send it over to me. And I know that there's been a lot more attention on menopause and this menopausal period in reproductive research. However, a lot of the focus from what I've seen has been on understanding menopause and how to help with symptoms. So there's so much like
hormone replacement technology,
exactly,
cooling sheets,
exactly, like all that stuff around menopause I think is really, really cool. But learning about the studies that relate to the causes of making menopause better, I think is so important. I also think it's important for women our age to have these conversations.
It is.
I have not talked to any of my circles and been like, hey, so
What
how
kind
are
of
you feeling
menopause
about
do
menopause?
you
Yeah,
want?
like, what do you feel about menopause? Like,
Yeah. Because
am-
I think it's something that, like, did you have women in your family that openly communicated with you about menopause?
no.
Ha-
Well, I mean, my mom's real young.
is she going through menopause yet?
Maybe. We don't know yet. Perhaps. That's kind of how it works until you know, you know?
Yeah. That's funny. I feel like I was like surrounded by a lot of women who were going through menopause
Mm,
kind of around the same time and like still through present day.
mm.
So it's like I feel like I had a lot of mentors like kind of like
Yeah.
sharing their experiences, not necessarily how to make it better. I think that's like where I come in. Like try out these new things that I learned.
Period.
But it like it was a taboo topic
Yeah.
even in their generation. And that's my mom, you know? So it's just
It's
like
not that long ago that people didn't know what
what
was
was
going
happening.
on.
Mm-hmm.
That's what blows my mind.
Yeah.
Like this whole, I know I did a video on this on our Instagram, but this whole femtech industry and boom happened in the 2000s.
Yeah. It's presently like very
This
much
is it.
on the curve.
Literally, and it blows my mind. Like we still know so little about menopause, about fertility, about like we know so little. And it's honestly getting a lot harder because ethics with studies, which is good, but tangent. Um, but these conversations about menopause, it's not a new topic, but it's a new topic of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's wild.
And when going back to what we were talking about earlier about everyone having a seat at the table in terms of
Mhm.
improving health outcomes, I think
Yeah.
this is an important conversation. Like, women are necessarily the ones experiencing menopause, but it affects marriages. It affects
Yes.
relationships with children.
Yes.
And I feel like if we were all better equipped or
Yeah.
more knowledgeable in understanding, hey, what's happening with mom, you don't feel like she hates you or like my marriage is falling apart, like whatever else happens at that like stage of life,
Yeah.
you're recognizing that there's a lot of changes happening with men's bodies too at that stage. So it's like I feel like if we're all more knowledgeable and literate on what's happening at various stages of our life cycle, we would be better equipped with handling the situations as they arise.
No, I agree. I want to go back to this longevity conversation. How long do you want to live?
I'm thinking like 96.
Okay. So you're going to be an old girl.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I love that.
As long as I'm healthy. Like
A healthy 96.
I pray and believe that I will be a healthy, cognitive elder there to love and support my family and those that
Yeah.
are still in my life. Like I want to live as long as God allows me
Yes.
within that like healthy cognitive ability.
Yes. Amen.
I had a auntie that lived to 116.
Auntie, you got good genes.
Mhm.
Get a girl. Get a girl. That's amazing. When you first brought up this longevity discussion industry, it made me think about this documentary on Netflix. Have you seen it? I didn't prep this podcast, but it's this guy who is a billionaire, and
He spends a whole lot of money on staying alive.
yes,
Yeah,
wow.
he was at the beginning of the article that I read to bring
Yes.
here.
Yes, like what is going too far? He is taking, I think it's like 70 vitamins a day, and he's doing things that aren't actually proven by doctors yet. It's still in the study phase, and they've done it on animals, and the rats are benefiting from it, but how do we know how it's going to work in humans? Like what is too much when focusing on longevity?
Right. For me personally, I'll give an anecdote and then I'll answer your question
Okay.
after. If money and time were not an obstacle in my life, I would be doing a lot to like live the most optimal life because that's what I like to do. Like that's my form of self-care. I love the sauna. I love a massage. I love a yoga class. I love a therapy session. I love an ice bath. I love vitamins that work. I love healthy food. Like
you love feeling good.
I love feeling good. Exactly. And it's
Who
like
doesn't?
Exactly. So it's like, if money and time weren't a concern for me, that would actually be very interesting.
Yeah.
But like,
I would be him.
yeah, exactly. NAD drips. I want that. Like, people are doing so many different protocols
Yeah.
to feel good.
Yeah.
And I truly feel like the older I'm getting, I'm not feeling old, but like,
I am.
I'm like recognizing I can't do certain types of squats anymore.
It's so humbling. It's actually very frustrating.
It's frustrating. I have to wake up in the morning, I get an exercise band, and I like fire my muscles. Like I just start to like work my legs, work my arms, and I didn't have to do that 10 years ago, you know?
But I would say that that's preventative and proactive and really,
It
really good.
is.
Because if you're talking about what happens now will manifest in your menopause and you're building your muscle mass, like that's really good that you do that.
Right.
And I'm sorry that you gotta do that.
I know. I'm
feel
only
normal.
doing that because, yeah, if I don't do it, I'm literally in pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I do think that there is a too far though, but
Mhm.
truthfully, go off with your money. Like, as long as you're not harming other people,
Yeah.
I think he could be doing whatever he wants to do. You're actually helping the studies then, maybe.
He
Like,
is. Well, he is, but like in studies, there's something called a confounder, which is like these are all the other things that's going on that could actually be helping this thing.
Mhm.
So we can never
You
actually
never
study
know.
because he's having 70 pills a day.
Yeah.
And we are only one of those. So how do
Right.
we know if we're actually the ones helping?
Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah. So, truthfully, when it comes to longevity, I don't want to say there is no limit, but I
Yeah.
feel like we're still so early in the conversation.
Mm,
But I also do recognize that generally, from what I've learned and understood, these human bodies do have an expiration date, and they do teeter around like the same numbers for men, and like men have their own number and women have their own number.
yeah.
Regardless of all these things, like you
Yeah.
kind of still kick the bucket around the same time. It's just
Why are you so insensitive? You said kick the can. It's gonna happen. What? I mean, you're not wrong. It was just really the way you said it that got me. Anyway.
Yeah. I feel like truthfully, this is like a sidebar anecdote. We always kind of get here towards the end of our podcast.
Yeah.
I feel like growing up, I experienced a lot of death in like funerals.
Yeah.
I just had like an older population of family too.
Yeah.
So it's just like I went to like a lot of my like grandma's friends' funerals and like her funeral and like stuff like that. So now I just be like, we gonna die.
And we are.
Yeah. But I do think that investing in and having access to the means of how to live the best life that you can and the
While you're
healthiest
here.
life that you can while you're here is very
Exactly.
important.
I agree.
And I would do that. Sign me up.
Yeah. I think, isn't it so sad though that statement has to be said? If money and XYZ weren't an option for my health, I would do XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
That's so frustrating to me.
It is.
Because we talked about is health a human right? And I believe it is. And so you should be able to do those things for your health.
I know.
You
Can I?
should.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, go.
I kind of want to go off on a tangent.
I love to.
It's like a really big tangent.
I
I'm
love
about to
it.
reach behind me and get a book.
Okay.
Okay.
Kai is our reader.
I love to read.
She brings me all the fun things with books. And I don't read the books, but I love to listen to the conversations.
So I'm a big systems thinker.
Okay.
Systems thinking is just basically having a good understanding of the components that like make up a reaction. Systems thinking is a science, but it's also very psychological and emotional, and it's fascinating. There are literally formulas for outcomes and feelings and things like that. So this book is Thinking in Systems by Donella Meadows, and the chapter that I was reading recently that I was like, whoa. Was systems, traps, and opportunities. So it's like all systems are working for certain outcomes,
Okay.
and everything that you're engaging is in part of a system. Like
Okay.
us right now recording this, we are within several systems right now, and
Like Inception.
exactly, and like so there's either feedback loops that like reinforce a behavior to accelerate, or loops or that cause it to decrease. It's literally
Like the way I look at you may make you feel like I'm liking what you're saying, so you're going to open up more and talk more.
yeah,
or
but then
vice
that's
versa.
related to the clothes that I'm wearing and like what I ate for breakfast. Like all these systems, like what are the elements that build up a system and how's the system operating? And then just generally, like when you hear like it's a systemic issue, like we're talking about systems. like, um, so the chapter that I really loved was systems, traps, and opportunities. So it's like, when do these systems go wrong, and like what are the opportunities there?
Okay.
This is a real tangent. I had talked. This is my morning conversation yesterday.
I love.
So I'm gonna read it.
Okay.
So this trap is called shifting the burden to the intervener. Shifting the burden, dependence, and addiction arise when a solution to a systemic problem reduces or disguises the symptoms, but does nothing to solve the underlying problem.
Kai, you love big words, and you love books that have big words. I just need you to say that in human terms.
I'll summarize.
Okay.
Shifting the burden of something, so shifting the burden of an equitable healthcare system to organizations like Criado to relieve the symptoms of an inequitable healthcare system does nothing to solve the underlying problems of an inequitable healthcare system.
Okay. It's just a Band-Aid.
Whether it's a substance that dulls one's perception or a policy that hides the underlying trouble. Like what you were talking about earlier with policies. The drug of choice interferes with the actions that could solve the real problem. All these Band-Aids are making it harder to solve the inequitable healthcare system. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, I'll finish. It says, if the intervention designed to correct the problem causes the self-maintaining capacity of the original system to atrophy or erode, then a destructive reinforcing feedback loop is set in motion. So if all of these Band-Aids actually do make people feel a little bit better in the moment,
then
we're making it actually worse, you know, like because like it's giving no reason to solve the inequitable healthcare system because all these Band-Aids are making people stop bleeding.
What if that problem, though, the inequitable healthcare system, is so big?
Well, that's what this is talking. This is referring to like industrialization. Like the systems that this book is referring to are like huge systems. So it's like, So to conclude, it says, well, the system will become more and more dependent on the intervention and less able to maintain its own desired state. So similarly to how like the government is functioning, like we're relying on SNAP and food stamps and exactly. So the way out, the best way out of this trap is to avoid getting in. Beware of symptom relieving or signal denying policies or practices that don't really address the problem. Take the focus off of short-term relief and put in long-term restructuring.
I have so many thoughts on this.
I was in my kitchen. I'm like, I'm actually making it worse.
I was like, so what do you think about what we do?
I know. So my husband had to help me think about how to think about this. We live in a world where innovation is required.
Correct.
Especially given the level of technological advancements and the level of like social dependence on technology and the reliability of the infrastructure that exists around us, that it's imperative that people create and innovate solutions to issues.
Okay.
I think that we are so far into a system where if we were to stop providing the Band-Aids, so quote unquote, it would mean such a catastrophic deterioration of like the people that are impacted by it. Yeah. And I say that to say that I haven't given up on the system's ability to correct itself in terms of like if we're talking about equitable healthcare access. However, I do think that we are at a state. I think technology is a really important conversation in this process because this book was referencing quotes. And this book was written a while ago, but like it's referencing quotes from the 1990s that you could put 2025 at the end of the quote. It would say the same thing. And you'd be like, oh, that makes sense.
Wow.
So it's like in 1992, we didn't have the same level of like artificial intelligence and technological advancements that we have now. So I do think at a certain point, the instead of technology will cause the restructuring of the system. It will get to a point where the people will have the ability to create a system within a system, I believe. But it's really imperative because within that, the book talks about a whole bunch of other traps, like success for the successful and a whole lot of other things where people get left out of the conversation. So it's like no one solution is going to solve all problems, but we're in a sticky situation.
Yeah. Well, but can you say, when you said a system within a system, can one argue that in the inequitable healthcare system, the WIC system is a system within that system to help?
It is. But like it's a Band-Aid solution. Like ideally, in an ideal world, the system should be functioning correctly.
But when has there ever been an ideal world?
Exactly. But so that's why systems thinking is just quantifying and qualifying human behavior, more or less. So it's like in an ideal world, industrialization shouldn't be at the cost of the environment. That's true.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like,
but it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's just like, and it probably always has been to a certain point.
Yeah.
But that's probably how the system is designed presently. And also success for the successful. Certain people are benefiting from that system way more than others.
That's what I was going to say. I love systems thinking also. And I think of it less of like the things in the world that are happening right now are all wrong because we're making it worse, because that depresses me. I think about it more when I am in the position to make a program system at Criado, at my other jobs. How am I going to make sure that within what I'm doing, I am trying to assess the root cause? And it doesn't mean that the root cause is the only thing I'm addressing. I'm also addressing the side effects of the root cause, because I am trying to make the world feel better for people momentarily, like right now. I want people to feel good right now. And while I'm doing that, I can be working on this back end in a different way. And I think both can exist.
Yeah.
But your book says no.
The book says that while both exist, we have to be very honest about the fact that the actual system is not improving. Because if we all were to stop our efforts on creating great and colorful and beautiful Band-Aids and worked on restructuring the system would work.
Could one argue that who knows what the ideal system is, though? Like, the ideal system has never been a thing ever before on this earth. Is that correct? Like,
it depends on.
It sounds like a utopia world to me.
Well, it depends on how you're thinking about it. So it's just like when you're thinking about humanity and the means that humanity needs for survival: food, water, shelter, healthcare.
Yeah.
Like, where can we create a system that all people receive all of those things? And we can still have a competitive market where the factors of industrialization can still exist. There's still capital, management, resources, and governance. Like, how can we look at the elements and create a world where each element has the ability to interact with another element in a way that's equitable? And I don't want to start talking about socialism. That's not our jurisdiction.
It's not. But I love this tangent.
Yeah.
I think it helps us think about the work that we're doing and why addressing the root cause to issues. How are we addressing the root cause to issues is a valid conversation for anyone in the, I was going to say in the social space, but in the world.
Yeah.
Should be talking about.
And where and how what you're innovating on exists within the greater ecosystem.
Yeah.
I think it's really human also of us to think that our endeavors are solving any problem at all. Like, everyone loves to feel good. Like, everyone wants to solve a problem, you know?
Yeah.
But it's really easy to, one, get distracted from the facts. But what I was going to say is to look at the facts. Like, what are you doing? How is what you're doing existing in the greater ecosystem of human experience? Yeah. What else is existing within this context? And I think that is to me, that is the responsibility of an innovator. Like, I think we've come out of a technological age a little bit like post-dot-com boom, where innovation was simply thought, website.
that was innovation.
Code, app. Yeah, you know? Yeah. But I do think that as we continue on the journey of growth as a human race, that it is important to really look at past one's ego of like, I'm doing good.
Yeah.
And like look at how is what you're doing impacting everything else that exists around you and the people that you're trying to reach, serve, whatever, replace it. We run a nonprofit.
Yeah.
We can replace community with audience or users or early adopters, whatever.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's human beings utilizing a resource. And what we're trying to do is capitalize on resources and distribute them to those that need them.
I think this conversation is a really good example of why you're in the role of our CEO, because you dive into, and it sounds like you're really passionate about thinking about that in a systems way. And I love that for you.
Thank you.
I love that for you. And I think that's necessary in order to be in the role that you're in for Criado. For myself, and focusing on individuals' feelings and emotions now in the moment is what drives me. And to think of systems thinking as being the only way or the right way to think doesn't feel realistic. We all think in different ways.
You need a systems thinking approach with an emotional intelligence approach. It's a combination of all of them.
Yeah.
I think systems thinking to me is something that drives longevity. So it's just like, if you want to last and you want to exist for generations and like actually like make an impact and like something, like you have to affect a system in a certain way.
Yeah. No, I love that. Thank you for bringing your book out for that tangent. It was good. No, it was good. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you.
That's the new book these days?
Well, I'm almost done with that one. I've been on a reading kick. I've been like, it motivates me to finish a book because I want to start the next one. So the next book that I'm going to read, I have one more chapter in that book.
Okay.
Joseph makes fun of me all the time. He's like, I'll be in bed and he's like, systems thinking at 10 p.m. Like,
because literally but that's who you are.
Yeah, but I read it all. So like the book that I was just reading prior to this book, I was reading Barefoot Contessa's memoir. Ina Garden's memoir. She's fantastic. Has lived an amazing life.
Yeah.
Ina, you're my idol. Great experience. I love everything that she's ever done.
Yeah.
And now I'm reading Systems Thinking. And the next book that I'm going to read is called Winners Take All. And I think you would be fascinated with it. It's about the social impact space and how at the end of the day, a lot of people in this space, once they like reach a certain threshold of accomplishment, become self-serving. And it just becomes another capitalistic money grab. And like what DAFs, let's save that for our next conversation.
Okay.
But like those are diversified investment funds where individuals can choose to invest in a DAF, and ideally it's designed because that money will be then invested into organizations and nonprofits, but a lot of times that money just sits there and grows.
Ooh. I
read a stat yesterday. The usage of DAFs increased 30% last year. Great, we love that. Where's the money going?
Put a pin in that.
Exactly.
Ooh, yeah, read up on that. Ask me my opinion of that. I like that. Winner sounds interesting.
Yeah, winner takes all.
Yeah, winner takes all. Ooh, balance. I love your balance.
We did next, maybe I'll read Squiggles and Colors for fun.
That's what I like to do. I mean, I think it's because I'm overloaded with studies.
Yeah.
Right now that I'm like, I can't read any more books. But tell me everything you learned.
I will.
I love it.
Well, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. This was so fun. Again, my favorite time of Criado is this.
You can find us online at gocriado.org and all of our socials at gocriado. And we'll see you next time.
See ya.